In 2002, Spider-Man swung his way onto the big screen for the very first time, gaining praise from anybody you can think of. Critics loved it, audiences loved it, even snobby comic fans loved it. 2 years later, Spider-Man 2 was released and blew everybody's fucking balls off. The stakes were raised. It was a more intense character piece. Bruce Campbell makes a fucking cameo. It's a genuine cinema classic that will forever evolve generations to come. Spider-Man 2 has been analyzed and picked apart by many. So naturally, when Spider-Man 3 was announced, people's expectations were really high, you know, kind of like Star Wars hype. This tells you how young I am. I was just finishing 4th grade, and I remember my classmates were talking about how excited we were for this film all the time. Spidey fever was fucking everywhere. When the film came out, people hated it. Over the years, I've never really heard people give this film a chance. I've always heard the same criticisms. Venom was underutilized, emo Peter Parker, too many villains, blah blah fucking blah. I never actually saw the film until my senior year of high school. I mean, the first time I saw it, I was sort of just indifferent to it. I didn't hate it, but nor did I love it either. I remember hating the emo Peter Parker dance scene because... well, duh, and that was pretty much all I can remember. It wasn't until my second semester of college when somebody brought up how Andrew Garfield was the best Spider-Man. What the fuck are you talking about? Are you higher than that, Wes? I mean, let me be clear for a second. I don't really like The Amazing Spider-Man that much at all, and I plan to do a separate video on that one day, so I'm not really gonna get into it right now. I decided after hearing this statement to pop in all 3 films from the original trilogy. And I actually discovered something interesting when finishing the 3rd film. I think it's genius. So I'm not going to go too in depth with the plot right now, but you know, I do have to point out some things, so this plot summary might seem a little longer than my usual plot summaries. After the events of Spider-Man 2, Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson are still living happily ever after. One night, while Peter and Mary are laying on a web looking at the stars, a mysterious black substance appears from a meteorite. This black substance attaches itself to Peter's motorbike and follows him home. Meanwhile, Harry Osborn is planning revenge on Peter for killing his father, becoming the new Goblin. Peter Parker finds out that the man who killed Uncle Ben, Flint Marko, has escaped prison and is on the loose. Flint eventually turns into the Sandman after escaping from the police goes terribly wrong. Yeah, by the way, remember that black substance earlier in the film? Well, it takes over Peter's suit, making him more powerful, and also bringing out his darker side. Oh god. Peter then has to find the good within himself and save the day from evil once again. Now, let me be clear for a second. While that plot summary might have sounded crazy as all fuck, it works. The stakes are raised once again. Instead of one villain this time, we have 3. We have the Sandman, Venom, and we have the new Goblin. There's a 4th villain though, which also happens to be our hero, Peter Parker. A lot of time in the film is spent on Peter fighting his own inner demons. Spider-Man 2 sort of touched on this, but this film kinda kicks it up a notch. Peter still goes through an arc, a change, just like Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 1. Each film in this series progressively becomes darker, with the stakes raising every film. The first film, it was Uncle Ben's death that caused him to come back up as a hero. The second film was his relationship with everything and everyone around him putting him down. That was a terrible way of wording that. This film is Peter fighting himself. He progressively becomes more and more of a fucking asshole. Who does that shit? While some may say that there are too many villains, I think it kinda worked for the message the filmmakers are trying to deliver. But I'm gonna hold off on that thought for a second, and I'll save that for the very end. While Spider-Man 3 I think is a great film on its own, it does have some problems. But don't act like Spider-Man 2 or Spider-Man 1 didn't have any problems either.
Here's the real truth.
Oh, they had plenty. The comedy doesn't really work here. I mean, I'd be beating a dead horse if I brought up the dance sequence, right? Think about it, it's basically a really poorly done, exaggerated version of the raindrops keep falling on my head sequence from the second film. Also, why the fuck is Gwen Stacy here? She's very underplayed compared to everything else within this film. I didn't even have to mention her in the plot summary, did I? I feel like the only purpose she has is to cause conflict between Peter and Mary Jane when it wasn't really needed because it was already there. Gwen Stacy feels shoehorned. That's one of the major negatives really about this film as a whole. Two characters feel shoehorned. And speaking of shoehorned, let's talk about Venom. Venom doesn't need to be in the second half of the film. Venom only felt needed in the first half. Think about this. I keep saying that, do I? After Peter Parker rips him off, symbolism for telling his inner demons to fuck off and die like it's a game of Doom, Venom is shoehorned onto some other random dude. Okay, so I should explain this. I didn't write this on the script, but I should explain this onto where this is going. So there's this other photographer who's taking really good photos of Spider-Man that has sort of like a competition with Peter Parker. But, here's the thing. He's not really that good of a character. And to see him become Venom is fucking pathetic. Oh, I'm mad at Peter Parker for basic life shit and I want to murder him now because God knows we already have enough conflict. While all these negatives might affect the film for some, I actually brush it off. When the film is good, it's on par with the quality of the second film. Even the first film! Peter goes through an even tougher challenge and comes out stronger. By the end of the film, everybody forgives each other. What this story is about is not really about Spider-Man, it's about everybody. It's about revenge, just as much as it's about forgiveness. The Sandman killed Uncle Ben, but Peter forgives. Osborn finally forgives Peter over his father's death before he passes away. You could also say that Mary Jane and Peter finally come to a mutual understanding that their lives aren't going to be perfect. Now, while that may sound similar to the end of Spider-Man 2, I'm fine with that kind of thing being repeated. This isn't some Hollywood love story where everything is perfect. Tons of people complain about the ending, and they always say that the ending here is too long. I think this ending is very well executed. The film actually does a very good job at foreshadowing this ending, with a scene very early in the film.
You know what? I'd like to sing on stage for the rest of my life with you in the first row.
I'll be there.
I will say that this ending is very fairy tale-like, but I think it works within the context of the Spider-Man universe. It's a great ending, and a satisfying conclusion to one of the greatest cinematic superhero trilogies of all time. Spider-Man 3 is a film that grew on me. Is it an all-time favorite film? No. Is this film perfect? No. Is it a bad film? No. It's one of those films that I can look past all the flaws, because everything else is so good about it. With great power comes great responsibility.